no, California is not Spain. California is wild and crazy and that's what walking the California Mission Trail is. It's wild and crazy, and it's concrete and it's pavement, and it is what it is. It is a beautiful pilgrimage. It's something that we can all do because we can walk. You can get out and just walk today, 3 miles on the Mission Trail, 3 days tomorrow, 3 days the next day. Before you know it, you've really walked the 800 miles.
I'm Damian Bassage, and this is the California Frontier Show, where we take a deep dive into California history and go beyond what you may or may not have learned in school. Today, my guest is Edie Littlefield Sundby. Edie, as far as I know, is the first person to walk the entire length of the mission chain of both Californias, Baja California, Mexico, and the state of California in the United States. And she did it all while dealing with stage 4 cancer. Her story is very personal, and at the same time, it intersects with crucial points in California's history. And as I mentioned, both Californias. So it ties in also really well to what has unintentionally become a series on Baja California here on the California Frontier Show. So let's get straight into this very moving interview. My guest, Edie Littlefield Sundby, is the author of The Mission Walker, a selling memoir, and it's about her journey as the first person to walk the whole Camino Real de las Californias, the mission trail from Baja all the way up to Northern California. And I think you've done more, which I hope we'll talk about as well. Welcome, Edie, and I would just love to know a little bit about the background of this story. I know we interviewed at the very beginning of my podcast, at the first episode, I believe, my guest had walked the entire mission trail of Alta California, but you've done them both. So I'm really fascinated to hear. And I know it's a very personal story for you, not just about history or adventure. So yeah, can you tell us more?
Well, every long walk starts with one step. And, what motivates us to take that one step and what impels us to step forward. And there's usually a crisis in our life. And for me, I'm a walker. And I haven't always been a walker. I became a walker when I was hit by blue sky lightning on some clear day. And that blue sky lightning was cancer, stage 4 cancer. And it was in 8 organs. And it was spread so much through my body, in my liver, my colon, I had a 7-inch peritoneum tumor. It was everywhere. And it was so widespread that in San Diego, doctors did not want to treat me. They just wanted me to have palliative care because I was going to die too fast for having treatment. And lucky for me, I found Dr. George Fisher at Stanford, who said he could not cure me, but he would treat me to the best of his ability, whether I wanted aggressive treatment or none. And basically, we started aggressive treatment that very day that I saw him. And now I've been alive, Damian. I still with seedlings of cancer. I have a small cancer, even in my brain, small tumor. But I've been alive now for almost 20 years. Oh, I say that, and I can't believe it either. How enormously lucky I am. And one thing I have discovered in everything, whether it's walking a 1,600-mile mission trail, or whether it's getting through stage 4 cancer and whatever, I've discovered that life is mystery. Life is mystery, and we are all unique. And my ability to walk today, I don't know how far or how long I will walk today or tomorrow. I don't know how long I will live, be it today, tomorrow, whenever. We're all mortal. I do know that walking extends our mortality. And I do know that walking is the best medicine there is. Even Hippocrates said it's the best medicine. And today, Damien, it's the most prescribed medicine in the world. And I always say, hey, take a walk, not a pill. Whatever can help you with pills, walking can probably do better. That said, we need a place to walk, and we need something, a higher purpose. And I think that's why pilgrimages all the way down forever and ever and ever. Life is a pilgrimage. You're on a pilgrimage. I'm on a pilgrimage. We're all pilgrims. It's all a walk of faith, for all of us. And we are so lucky in California to have the old California Spanish Mission Trail in our own backyard. Sometimes it's literally right next to our house. If we live anywhere along the coast from San Diego all the way to Sonoma, you are within a few minutes of the California Mission Trail. And some people started several years ago, a good friend of mine, Butch Briery, putting together a hiker's guide. And actually, I was just reading that, getting ready for the podcast today, a hiker's guide to the California Mission Trail. And I was the 6th person to walk from San Diego to Sonoma on the Mission Trail. And I started 5 months after Stanford removed my right lung. And so I'm very highly motivated to walk, having only one lung. If I don't walk, I don't breathe. And I will just tell you that out along the California Mission Trail, you're transformed. It's a transcendent experience. And it's not just the mission trail per se, it's the walking experience. Our bodies are healing machines. Our bodies are always in the present moment. Our bodies are always there for us as long as we take care of them and as long as we move. And the mission trail in California, be it the 800 miles from San Diego to Sonoma or the 1,600 miles from Loreto to Sonoma, what an incredible, incredible place for a transcendent experience.
So you did this with one lung, is what you're telling me.
One lung. I've had actually 832,000 milligrams of chemotherapy.
Wow.
I've had dozens and dozens of radiation treatments. I've lost 60% of my liver, 10 of my colon, 10 of my stomach, my right lung, and part of my throat. And through all of that, what got me through it really was walking and understanding and the joy of life. And I've always said this, that the fear of death will never save you, but the joy of life and living will. And that's one of the reasons I walked the California Mission Trail, was because it had a significant imprint on me at the time. I was diagnosed and told I only had a few months to live. The first thing I did when I heard that diagnosis and I got in my car, I was all alone. I drove away from the doctor that told me I was filled with cancer, and I hadn't been to a doctor for 20 years. He said I was filled with cancer. And first thing I did, I got in the car, I pulled over the side of the road, and wouldn't you know it, Damien, I pulled right underneath one of those California mission bells.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen it. They're every mile up and down the coast, pretty much, San Diego, Sonoma. But they're just trying, my breath being taken away, being shocked, being terrified, really, being numb, like you have cancer and it's all over you, and, prepare your family, prepare yourself. And then that mission bell, and when I rolled down the window of my car and the breeze and it was so beautiful. Life was so beautiful and so transcendent. And I just thought, whatever, it's like, I wanted to live so bad with every ounce of my being. I wanted to live. And of course, we all do. I've not met one person in the cancer center for all these years who didn't want to live with everything in their being. And that's why I feel so lucky. And one of the reasons I did the mission walk really was to scatter the ashes in a way, the emotional ashes of all the people that I have known and loved who 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 still walk with me in spirit, and they would be walking with me out on the mission trail. They'd be walking with me today, but they're no longer with us.
So you didn't have the idea of walking the missions before your diagnosis. This is something that kind of hit you as a revelation, if you will.
It hit me 6.5 years after my diagnosis. Yeah, because at my time of my diagnosis, the only thing you can think of is, my gosh, you're dying so fast. What can you do to save your life? And you have to get someone like Dr. Fisher, aggressive treatment. And people say, well, chemotherapy will kill you. Well, excuse me, chemotherapy might kill you, but cancer will kill you. And you don't have any time to delay or to deny. And so I took a very aggressive treatment, and I'd never been a walker to speak of. I learned that once I got an infusion of chemotherapy, that the chemo was so toxic, it had to come into my body, it had to kill the cancer, and then I had to purge it out as fast as possible. How do you purge out toxic chemicals out of your body? Well, you sweat it out, pee it out. That's how you purge it out. And so I would get a chemotherapy infusion, and I only had like 48 hours with that next dextrose, that saline high, where I had any energy before it knocked me out, and I couldn't even crawl out of my bed. But for that first 48 hours, I could drink voluminous amounts of water. I could put on my headphones. I always like Elvis singing gospel. He's the number one gospel singer in the world for a reason. Okay, and I'd go out and I'd walk the canyons in San Diego, and actually I saw another mission bell at the very entry to Torrey Pines State Park, the canyon there, which is part of the mission trail, by the way. And I'd been walking it all these years and never even really realized it. But walking the canyon and sweating it out, pouring out the overflowings, if you will, that's helped get me through 832,000 milligrams of chemo. But my body was so broken at the end. But it wasn't just my body that was broken. My life was broken. I was emotionally broken. I was spiritually broken. And one of the things I've realized and learned in life is that life breaks us, every single one of us. But walking can heal us. Walking and around the block, and always feel that as a country, if we got out and walked more, we would love each other more. And one of the things walking the old California Mission Trail, I got so close to the people who had walked there before, the past, the present, and you're even kind of in touch with the future when you're out there walking. It was and is a transcendent experience. And that's why now there are like 3 and 4 or 5,000 people part of the California Mission Walker organization. And that's why at any point in time, you're going to find many, many people now in California walking from San Diego to Sonoma. And if any of your listeners want a amazing experience, and a very well-mapped trail now, thanks to Butch Briery and the California Mission Hiker Guide, is you can get out and you can start walking, and you can walk all the way to Sonoma, and just following his directions.
So is that what you did? You decided to follow the guide and walk straight through all the way to Sonoma, or did you think about doing it in pieces? Tell us how you logistically did this. And of course, then we want to get to the whole adventure in Baja, California.
Yes. Okay. So how it came about is I had, for 6.5 years, every 3 weeks, I had chemotherapy. And it just became a way of life. Even horrible things can become kind of a way of life. But oftentimes, I had a lot of surgeries, and I had 4 radical surgeries during that time. Every time I had a surgery, my husband and I would drive up the old El Camino Real, which is historic U.S. Highway 101. We'd drive up to go to Stanford, and 500 miles from San Diego, and that's where I would see the mission bells every mile. Every day with cancer is uncertain, because you never know if you're going to make it through that whatever's happening to you. And going up every time we went up the old US Highway 101, old the El Camino Real, and we saw those roadside markers, I wanted to get out and hug everyone because I was still alive, and I was so joyous to be alive. And when your body is depleted, the only thing that is going to get you through is your spirit. So you have to keep your spirit elevated. And just the thought of hugging those bells got me to the hospital, got me into surgery, got me home, got me back in the canyon doing some walking, and then trying to deal with all the things that were happening to me because cancer attacked my feet. It absolutely, I just show you pictures of my feet that I had no skin left on the bottom of my feet. My skin was totally burned off my hands and my feet. I looked like a scarecrow because my hair like looked like I'd been stuck. I'd stuck my hands in a electrical outlet. You're death. You're closer to death than to life. And there are many, many times in that 6.5 years I was closer to death than to life. But anyway, the very culmination, and I write about this in my book, The Mission Walker. The first 75 pages is what can you possibly do to kill cancer before it kills you? And so that's really the illness narrative is the first piece of the Mission Walker. And then the second piece is follow the bells, follow the bells. And that's what I did when cancer came back again, and it kept coming back because that's what cancer does, late stage cancer. It came back at one time, both in my liver and my lung at the same time, and two cavities. It was almost sure death. And I go extensively in the book on how I tried to deal with that. But needless to say, what happened is I was able to radiate the cancer that came back in the liver because I was missing so much liver, 60% of my liver that never grew back, and then which enabled them to go in and take out my right lung. So it was after they took out my right lung. And losing your lung, you lose your ability to breathe. You lose your ability to breathe. You lose your ability to move. And you've got to restore your body. And how do you do that? You do that through movement. Because, like I said, your body's a healing machine, but it requires movement to do its job. And so I knew that the only way I was going to be able to heal from all of this 6.5 years was to do something dramatic, to do something. I had to do something to try to put my life back together, my body back together, my spirit back together. And what better thing to do than walk an old mission trail? And I didn't have to get on a plane and fly to Spain. I didn't have to get on a plane and fly to Jerusalem. I could, right just outside my door where I was walking, right on El Camino Real, I could walk from San Diego to Sonoma. And that's what I did. And it took me 55 days. It was a straight through walk. And I was very lucky because I got this idea going up to have my lung removed. And I just happened to, Google California Mission Trail. And I found out about Butch Briery and the fact that he and his wife, Sandy, had walked it. And so I connected with Butch Briery and he said, Edie, we're going to be walking. And this is like in February. I just had my lung removed in September. This is February. And he said, Sandy and we're going to be speaking at the American Pilgrims, the Camino, because they'd walked Spain so many times. And he said, it's in Santa Barbara. So we're going to walk from San Diego to Santa Barbara on the California Mission Trail, which was what we've already done. But if you want to walk with us, be ready. And it was like next week. And I wasn't ready, but I got ready real fast because to have an opportunity to walk with someone like Butch Briery, it took all my fears away. I had such confidence in his ability and Sandy Briery's ability. And so one cold, wet, horrible morning on February 20th of 2013, we started walking, and there was a whole group of us walking because a whole bunch of people were going to this in Santa Barbara, the American Caminos, American Pilgrims of the Camino. And
so you're in San Diego. You start in San Diego.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I knew Butch was, he said, he said, Sandy and I are going to walk, and you're more than welcome to walk with us. But he said, I'll tell you what, I start walking every morning at 7 o'clock, whether you're there or not. And he was absolutely remarkable because of the discipline of a long walk. And so we started walking. I never walked more than 4 miles in my entire life. And here I was going to walk 800 miles. But that's not the attitude you have. The attitude is, I'm going to walk one step at a time, one day at a time. And basically, God's going to decide how long and how far. And walking is such a metaphor for life, because isn't that true? God decides how long and how far. And so I had this opportunity to walk with Butch and Sandy, and we started out, we walked 20 days without stopping. We walked 296 miles without stopping every single day for 20 days. And here I only had the one lung. I had, just like there were days and there were mountains in between, San Diego and Santa Barbara. And it's like, and Butch, he was a fast walker and he never looked back, just like the vaqueros down in Mexico. They don't look back when you're walking, you look forward. Because
and where were you sleeping?
Now, Butch and Sandy, they did have sleeping bags, and his hiker's guide has all the campgrounds, but he also has Motel 6s all along the way, too, that you can sit in Motel 6. Now, I was lucky because a friend of mine, Ron Graham, who's a mathematician, he had a camper van that he and his wife had, but they never used it. It was called Q Random, because that's his mathematical theory was Q Random. And I love that, being in a camper van called Q Random, because that's a mathematical theory that says, hey, everything's related. There is nothing random, does not really exist. And
wow.
Yeah, and this is all in the book. And so it's like Q Random. And so a friend drove the camper van for me for at least the first half of the trip. And then my husband was able to join me for part of it. But so I had a camper van because I had just had my right lung removed 5 months before. And how they remove your lung, Damien, is they cut you from the center of your breastbone all the way back to almost to your spine. They take those ribs and they pull them apart to get your lung out. And then you have a bronchial stump. So they take your shoulder muscle and cover the bronchial stump. But what happens is so many nerve endings are torn that you always have nerve pain. And not have a backpack. I can't have more than 5 pounds. And so I was so lucky that Ron Graham loaned me his camper van. And so I would walk, and it got to the point even the first 4 or 5 days that Butch and Sandy had their backpacks on. They were camping. Before you know it, they had their backpacks in the camper van, and we were using the camper van even to transport their tents and things. But they always slept outside. They never slept inside. They were such an enormous inspiration to me. And at night even, because I just had my lung removed and I had a lot of fluid in my chest, I could never sleep laying down. I had to sleep upright because of all the fluid. Otherwise, it almost choked night. And so all those things, you just accommodate. You accommodate when you're out there. And it was just phenomenal. We made it, Butch and Sandy and I. And by the way, the people who started walking with us, they decided they didn't want to follow Butch and his hiking trail because a lot of it was concrete and pavement. And they decided they wanted to go and actually, kind of be their own adventurer. And none of them made it. So I learned, one of the first things I learned in a walk is one of the scariest things to a walker is, I know a shortcut. And that's life too. Anyone who tells you, I know a shortcut, do not listen to them. Do not listen to them.
Shortcuts make long delays.
Find someone who knows what they're doing, like Butch Bride, the hiker's guide, who's done it. Find someone who's survived stage 4 cancer. Find a doctor who has a person or two who has survived. Find someone who's done it, because all of life, Damien, is a formula. Find the formula and just do it. It's like Ecclesiastes reminds us, there's nothing new under the sun. None of this is new. Walking.
Right.
Hippocrates knew it was the best medicine. Duh. So we just keep reinventing the same thing over and over and over again. So, yeah. So the message out there is find someone's footsteps that you can follow, and where you find your inspiration, where you find your joy, where you find your peace, and start walking.
So from Santa Barbara, how did you make it to Sonoma? Did you keep going, or did you double back and start again?
That was 296 miles. And that was only like 1/3 the distance.
Right.
But I had the confidence that I could do it. I mean, the first 300 miles, although it took about 500 or 600 miles for my feet to stop hurting, and for my lung to stop hurting, and for me to be able to breathe normally. But at 300 miles of walking, 20 days straight, my hips were strong, my glutes were strong, my ankles were somewhat strong, but it was my faith that was strong. I figured, hey, I can do this. I can do this, because Butch did have he had a hiker's guide, his own just sheets of paper. It wasn't even a bound book. He had sheets of paper. So I had a copy of it, and every day I just tore off a page. I followed the page and tore it off. And one of the things you realize when you're on a long walk, Damien, when you're out there walking a mission trail, is throw your iPhone away. Throw away GPS. GPS does not work. And even Google knows this. Google has a team called Ground Truth. Ground Truth. Now, why do they call it Ground Truth? Because what's on the ground is different from what GPS may show you. Because, like with all big data, with AI data, that's what was, not what is. And as a walker, you're out there right now today. What's the weather doing? What disruptions are happening? Traffic disruption. You're out there. And tides. I mean, you're walking on the California coast, you're walking across the mountains, you're doing all this stuff. So ground truth is what's happening right in front of you. Now, down in Mexico, the Mission Trail, there are no cell phones. Period. You have to rely on a paper map. But I'll just tell you, I will never do a walk. A long walk, and to me, a long walk is anything 100, 200 miles. I will never do a long walk without a piece of paper.
So so GPS doesn't work. Map, you need a map, but of course a map isn't updated to the moment. Is it just a matter of just being flexible and prepared for whatever you happen to encounter? Is that it?
Yes. Every walk is a walk of faith. And one of the things that happened with cancer with me is a life with cancer is a life of uncertainty. You get kind of comfortable with uncertainty. And uncertainty is fearful oftentimes, but you get more comfortable with it. And you also get more comfortable with fear. And one of the things you realize, because you're in emergency rooms and so much and everything, you realize that fear is not in the moment. Fear is almost always in the mind. And so one of the things about walking is movement itself helps us deal with fear. And so from Santa Barbara to Sonoma, it was a walk of faith. It was one step at a time. And I truly never knew when I started out in the morning if I was going to even make it a mile. And even today, when I start out, I don't know how long I'm going to make it. I kind of start each day with this prayer is, Lord, have mercy on me. And then I end the day with, Lord, thank you.
Right.
You know, um,
Wow. So then how many months or weeks did it take to finish that whole route to Sonoma?
and I want to tell you, it took me 55 days to follow San Diego to Sonoma, walking on average 15 miles a day.
Okay.
And the way I did that is I was so, you know, God told Job, pour out thy overflowings, pour out thy overflowings. And for Job, God was saying anger. My overflowings was this cancer stuff was, I was overwhelmed. And so I had to pour out those overflowing. And the way I poured out those overflowings on the walk was to just feel with grace and not have any sound at all. I've never walked 1 block or 1 mile with anything in my ears, ever, ever. And walked the California Mission Trail from San Diego to Sonoma. There are 21 missions. So you're not walking 800 miles. You're walking from mission to mission.
Mm-hmm.
And the Franciscans in those missions, 3 of them are not active parish churches. The rest of them are active parish churches with Franciscans still there. And the Franciscans today treat you like they did 300 years ago. And that is, you arrive at a mission, they ask you if you're thirsty, if you're hungry, and oftentimes they'll ask you if you need a place to stay that night. They've been treating pilgrims like that, and they treat pilgrims like that everywhere, whether it's in Europe or it's California, whether it's in San Diego or Sonoma or Santa Barbara. They welcome you with loving arms, and wherever you are in life, actually, people welcome you with loving arms. I don't know why we're so afraid of, it's like people are afraid to walk around their neighborhood. Right now I'm walking across the United States. I've walked 1,400 miles, no, about 1,800 miles from Pensacola, and I just finished walking across Texas to El Paso. And do you know, I've never had anything but goodness and kindness. When I walked that 1,600 miles from Loreto, and from Loreto, to the California border, um, uh, by myself and a pag mule, not speaking much Spanish, and we'll talk about that. But the kind of love I received from the people there was just overwhelming. And the same thing when I walked from San Diego to Sonoma, the amount of love that I received was just overwhelming.
Sounds to me like doing the walk, contrary to what you might think, instead of getting you into your thoughts and your mindset, it seems like it connected you more to the reality outside of your head, right?
Yes, Damien, I'm so glad you said that. Yes, we think of mindfulness is we're kind of sold on the that mindfulness is sitting and going, mindfulness is like in here. No, no, mindfulness is wow, wow. Mindfulness is getting outside your emotional self, connecting with something so much bigger. And how do you do that? You don't do that inside, and you certainly don't do it on this little bitty screen. No, you have to get outside. And when you're outside, you automatically look at the heavens. Automatically outside, you realize how small you are and how vast life and everything is and how small we are. But that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. We're part of a bigger whole. And you realize also that other people have come before you, and you realize that your feet that hurt, you realize the thirst you feel from dehydration, you realize thousands of people have felt that on this very dirt that you're walking today. That it's that it's empathy. It's what you talked about on your website for your podcast for the California Frontier Project. You wanted 3 things: context, an understanding of context, complexity, and empathy.
Right.
And I tell you, Damien, They should be listening to your podcast, but when they're not listening to the podcast, get out there and start walking the California Mission Trail.
Exactly. Can we jump back a little bit? You mentioned that at a certain point, your lung pain stopped. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, you know, um, lung pain is because you can't take a deep breath. It hurts so bad. And so immediately from San Diego to even Los Angeles, you've got 2 or 3 mountains that you go over. And outside of Los Angeles, there was a mountain, a pass called Santa Susanna Pass. And it was so terrifying that back in the days of the stagecoach they had to blindfold the mules and the horses because it was so steep that the animals would not go down. And by the way, I encountered this in Mexico, and the vaqueros had to do the same thing. You have to blindfold the animal. And that was so steep that I really, really, really thought I was never going to make it. I couldn't take a breath deep enough to accelerate. But one thing I'd learned in cancer is when you think you can't go on, you can. When you think you can't go on, you can. And I've had a lot of experiences in my life. Like when I was 17, making money for college, I sold books door to door, Jackson, Tennessee, although I was raised on a farm in Oklahoma. And I had to knock on doors and sell these books. And sometimes I didn't think I could knock on another door, but I realized that I could. And it's like I realized going up that mountain, Santa Susana Pass. And the mantra that I had is, I can, I will, I'm going to. I can, I will, I'm going to. And your footsteps become shorter. They become slower, but all you have to do is just inch forward. And one thing you realize is when you get to the top of one mountain, there's always another mountain in front of you. But I can, I will, I'm going to. So it's old Santa Susana Pass that I lost my breath completely. And I was with Butch and Sandy at the time. Okay.
Okay.
So they were ahead of me, but I had them. And I also had Deb Dolly, my friend who was driving the camper van. So even I passed out. And the problem there is guys on motorcycles love coming down there, and bicycles love coming down there. And you're walking up, and they love
But
coming.
you passed out?
Back. So you can be hit, just if you're not very, very attentive. And so, yeah. And so I was able to do that. I was able to do Santa Susana Pass, which is, I swear, a 95% grade. And it's like, I made it to the top. After that, I felt like I could just do anything. I could do anything, any mountain. Walking slows us down, slows life down. The lessons it teaches us, but it empowers us. It empowers us. And that California Mission Trail, I know of no one who's walked it, whether they've walked 5 miles of it, 10 miles of it, 20 miles of it, who have not come away stronger and empowered in some way. Because that's what walking, especially a mission trail, does for us.
Well, I don't doubt it. And I think it's a dream of so many people, myself included, to do that, to walk the Mission Trail in California, especially because it almost covers most of the state, leaving out, a good chunk in the far north. And it's some of the most beautiful landscape
Beautiful.
in the country, right?
From San Diego to Los Angeles, I call it the Broadway of beauty. A Broadway of beauty. You're literally on the coast. It just takes your breath away, the beauty of it. Yeah, and you made a very interesting observation, Damien, and that is that the California Mission Trail defines California.
It does.
People don't realize that in a period of 3 months, just about everything in California, every river, creek, mountain, and town, Los Angeles, was given its name. 1769, in 3 months. It was a saint's day when they arrived, and so the Spanish celebrated Saint's Day and by, having a mass and naming where they were after the saint. And so, isn't it remarkable that from San Diego to San Francisco to, Monterey, that just about everything was defined in a 3-month period. And
Well, one of the things I love doing is oftentimes when you're in a place in California that doesn't have a Spanish name, if you dig a little bit, you'll find it, right? You'll find
yes,
either
yes,
the Rancho or that the city was founded on, or the original name of the city. For example, I grew up in near Concord, California, which is in the East Bay. Well, that was only named Concord in 1911. It was Todos Santos, All Saints, until then, right? So there's a whole other layer. And of
yes,
course, if you want to go back, even my good friend Eric Plunkett, who goes around and finds all the native villages
yes,
in Orange County and
yes.
finds even earlier. So that's wonderful. How about, so what gave you the idea to extend it down into Baja California?
Well, because the California Mission Trail does not start in San Diego.
Correct.
It ends in Sonoma. It ends in Sonoma,
Hmm.
but it doesn't start in San Diego. And I really wasn't really even connected with that. I just walked the California Mission Trail because of the mission bells. I wanted to hug them, and I was just so happy to be alive, and I needed a place to walk and restore physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so, what happened is, when I got to Sonoma, by the way, I was transcendent. I was no longer walking after about 600 miles. I was literally soaring, literally soaring. Um, I was that transcendent. But what happens is I never wanted to stop walking, but I did. And so the day-to-day mundane, the day-to-day distractions, you lose that transcendence so quickly, especially with all the racket we have, all the stuff we have coming at us and distractions constantly. And so I lost that amazing sense of joy of being. And cancer came back. Cancer, within 2 years, cancer came back in my remaining lung, and this time it wasn't a cluster of tumors, it was just one really large tumor, and
Wow.
so Stanford said, "We can't operate because we can't remove that much tissue, don't have a bunch left, but we're gonna radiate it." Now, radiation works, you oftentimes don't know for 18 to 24 months if they've even got it all, because on any scan, inflammation looks like cancer. And so it's like they radiate it, and you never know for quite some time whether they got it all. Well, sometimes you do because it explodes other places. Anyway, but so they radiated the large tumor, and I knew. And by the way, if you think the words "you have cancer" are scary, I think the scariest that you ever hear is "the cancer is back." That's even more terrifying. Because you just know. And so when they said that cancer is back, and Dr. Fisher told me we'd see it again. He said, "We'll see this cancer again." And he still, level sets me and, "We'll see this
That's
cancer again, press."
that's
But
good of him. That's that
oh,
realism.
amazing, just amazing. And so, it came back in my remaining lung, the large tumor. We did radiation, and during that time when I walked the California Mission Trail, I couldn't get enough of the spirit of the place. I started reading everything, and in reading that, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm lucky because the California Mission Trail doesn't start in San Diego. The California Mission Trail starts in Loreto, 1,000 miles below the border, and I'd only walked half of the California Mission Trail. And, we talked about having a goal that's big, and that's what you need in order to soar above, to transcend the things that are happening to you. Sometimes you need something big. Well, the cancer coming back and my remaining lung, the fear of all that, um, it was really the motivation, if you will. But also, it's more than that, was the adventure. It was the sense of, oh my gosh, I wonder what it's like down there. And because you can read, and by the way, when I read history, Damien, I only read journals, real-time journals that are being written by people who are walking then, not people who are looking in the rearview mirror back in history, but those who are actually walking and living the history. We can pass judgment on them later if we want, but if I'm going to walk, I want to know who walked there, what they saw, how they did it, just like cancer. Who's done this, how they do it. But anyway, so I knew that I could walk the Cal. I could try. So the first thing I did, cancer came back. I did the radiation. I knew it's going to take some time to see if it'd come back. But one of the things, if we got it all, I didn't want it coming back again some other place. And really, movement, I really feel, is one of the best cures for cancer, if you will, or preventative things for cancer. So I knew it started in Loreto, the Mission Trail, and I Googled, Loreto Mission Trail, and I hooked up with Trudy Angel. And she's been on your podcast, right?
Yeah, she's been on the podcast. She's a local Napa Valley person too. So yeah,
Yes.
Trudy's wonderful.
And so she was, she took people into the desert on her mules and stuff. And I connected with her and I said, I want to walk the California Mission Trail. And I had Harry Crosby. I met with Harry Crosby. He only lived 4 or 5 blocks from me. And of course, he's the one that had mapped it out in 1969. And his book in 1974 had the physical maps, which I actually tore out. And that was his 7 physical maps that I had with me.
Holy cow, Harry Crosby's a legend.
He's amazing. Amazing. And he is the one that told me really how to do this. And he said, Edie, never go in the Sierras of Mexico without a person born there and raised there. He said the vaqueros will protect you. They will guide you. They alone know where the water is. They alone know where the dangers are. And he said they will protect and guide you. And sure enough, so Trudy said she could provide me a mule because these are roadless ranchos.
Wait, can I pause you for a second?
Yes.
Did anybody when you started getting this idea to go to Baja, anybody try to discourage you?
I never asked. I never told my doctors.
Right.
I never told my doctor that I was walking from San Diego to Sonoma because Dr. Fisher always said, Edie, we've worked so hard to save your life. Please don't do anything foolish. And anytime you're out walking, especially hundreds of thousands of miles, that's a very foolish thing to do. So you just don't, and I'm part Native American myself, and part of the wisdom of the Native American is that you don't talk about something that you're going to do because that's a bad omen. Don't talk about what you want to do or you're going to do. Do it. Then talk about it. And so I didn't really share with a lot of people. But Trudy, so I knew that down in Baja, California, Mexico, there were no cell phones. There were no doctors. There were no people for hundreds of miles out there. There would be no ATMs, no credit cards. There's nothing out there. Nothing. And it was the Jesuit trail, not the Franciscan trail. The Jesuit trail that started down there in 1697. And the Jesuits are the greatest road builders in the world next to the Romans. You can tell a Jesuit trail because it's straight through the mountains, okay? Just like you can look at England and you can see the Roman road. It's as straight as it can be. If you look at the El Camino Real, the old Jesuit trail from Loreto to the border, it's almost as straight as it can be. They don't care that there are 5 or 6 mountains there. They don't care about it. They just straight through the mountains.
Wow.
And so to me, I mean, those people that just total inspiration. But okay, back to Trudy. Trudy said she could provide me a mule because that's the only way you're going to get out, do anything out there is a mule. She could provide me a mule for 10 days and she had tourists coming in to go out in the desert, but her vaquero, they weren't coming in for 5 days, so she could loan me her vaquero, Chemo RC, for 5 days, and she could loan me a pack mule for 10 days. And that was good enough for me because I'm used to dealing with uncertainty. And I'd never really even set up a tent. I never really camped. And I got some REI gear bags, and I got on a taxi in San Diego, went to the Tijuana airport, got a flight directly down to Loreto with a promise of a pack mule for 10 days and a vaquero for 5 days. And
Sorry, can you just tell me what year this was now and how
yes,
long
that's 2015.
So a
2000
couple of years after the first one.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And so, so I got down there, and I just, again, it's one day, one step at a time. And I never knew for over 2 months and 972 GPS miles, because I did have a Iridium satellite phone that I could ping my location for safety's sake. And my husband in San Diego would get those pings. He knew more where I was, but then I had no idea. I just pinged it when I could. Okay. I never knew for that entire time where the next meal was coming from. I never knew where the next mule was coming from, or where the next man or woman was coming from, who would take me the next 20 to 30 to 40 kilometers or miles. They only know in their ranch, they are so smart in the desert Sierras of Mexico. They're so smart is they know that water, and they think they know where the water is, but they really oftentimes don't because it's a desert. And a man can't survive more than 2 days without water, and some animals can't. But you can survive 20 days without food, but without water, 2 days. And so a vaquero, he will only feel comfortable within 30 to 40 kilometers. And they know pretty much every twig. They know the El Camino Real, the old road through their ranchos, and they can only get to their ranchos on a mule. These are roadless ranchos, roadless. And these are men, these are real cowboys. You know, it has not changed one bit. The California cowboy myth and legend is dead in California, but is vibrantly alive just south of our border. And the cowboy, the vaquero culture is exactly like it was. Enormous respect for tradition, enormous respect for culture, enormous respect for God. And so when these people, didn't speak much Spanish, and I didn't have time to learn Spanish because, with cancer, you realize you don't have time to do a lot of stuff. You have to do it. And so I went down there, and I knew I didn't think cowboys don't want to talk to you anyway. Vaqueros don't want to talk to you. And so they have a job to do, and that's to keep you safe and themselves too. And you're on the Sierras, and sometimes you're on a trail in the mountain, and it's like 12 or 18 inches, and the mule, if it slips, you're dead. I mean, it's it's 2,000 feet down. And
that's
so
not the time for small talk.
Exactly. And so being next to 12 kids in Oklahoma cotton farm, I was used to kind of taking care of myself too. So I never expected the vaqueros to set up my tent or fix my coffee or anything like that, anyway. And I tried to be very, very respectful of them. They were incredibly respectful of me. But the fact that I was on a pilgrimage, I was like on a sacred expedition in the minds and the hearts of the people down there, and how they treated me. I just can't even tell you how wonderfully I was treated through wherever I went south of the border. And one story. It's total. There's no electricity down there, and the world goes dark when the sun goes down. We forget that the world goes totally dark, and in the desert, that's when all the dangerous things come out. Is at night, so you don't want to be out there. So wherever we were at 3:00 in the afternoon, we stopped, and I'd set up my tent. Like oftentimes, the vaqueros slept outside with no tent, or they never had tents. But anyway, so that's where we stopped. Well, one time we came into a rancho, And it was about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and it was getting dark, and actually, it wasn't dark. The people in the rancho, a lady, it was a goat farm, just tiny little goat farm, she'd already gone to bed, and, we got her up, roused her up out of bed. She got up with a flashlight. She had a little single burner propane, a dirt floor, single burner propane, heater, so she boiled some water, made us some coffee, made us some tortillas, and then she motioned for me when it was time, when we're finished, when it's time to get ready for bed. She motioned for me. She knew I had my sleeping bag. She motioned for me to follow her and we went into a dirt room, another dirt room floor, and there was a bed on concrete blocks, 4 planks of wood on 4 concrete blocks. And she had a couple of blankets on that bed. That's where she slept. And she motioned for me to come with my sleeping bag, and she slept on one half of that wood plank, and I slept on the other half. She shared her bed with me, and she wanted to make sure I was up off the ground, away from the creepy crawly things, scorpions, centipedes, rattlesnakes, all those things that are out there. But out in the middle of nowhere, nowhere. And this happened every single day out there. In the middle of nowhere, these people shared whatever. They had nothing, but they shared everything. And that's what you also realize is that gratitude, real gratitude is when we have everything, we truly are grateful for nothing.
Hmm.
It's when we
Right.
have nothing that we're grateful for everything. And the people there had nothing, but they were grateful for everything and needed nothing. And what little they had, they shared it. And I when people tell me they're afraid to walk in their neighborhoods, I just am speechless. Um, yeah,
So these are farms or ranchos, rather,
yeah,
that have probably been there for, well, how
300
long
years.
would you? 300 years. So since the time that they were first populated. So people have been living, passing on these traditions for that long.
They live in the same structures. It's
Amazing.
amazing, like, these were the mule herders, these were the carpenters, these were the cow herders, these were the blacksmiths, these were the people that accompanied the missionaries that accompanied, the soldiers, these were the people who came, um, and and, um, and their ancestors are still there on these same ranchos, like La Presa was one of the, early mission ranchos. The same family's been there 300 years. They still use the same irrigation system the missionaries used 300 years ago. In
Wow.
fact, throughout the mission trail, they use the same irrigation system to water the crops because it's a desert, the desert. And they actually the old adobe there was actually the hut the missionary lived in. I
Holy
mean,
cow.
and yet it's still there. It's there. And because it's desert, the winds can destroy things as sand, a lot of it's made out of sandstone and adobe. But the people there, many of them do preserve what they have on their ranchos and they understand what they have on those ranchos. And like I said, their history and their culture is everything to them. Everything to them. They love the mission trail. They love it.
So those are the current day Californios.
Exactly, exactly. And I met people that entertained Harry Crosby,
That's
you
amazing.
know? Yeah.
You were saying it was getting dark around 5 o'clock. So I take it you're doing this during the winter time or fall and winter?
I started, October, I think it's October 23rd of 1697 is when Mission Loreto was founded, okay? And so I wanted to start walking from Loreto on October 23rd, okay? It didn't work out exactly like that. I don't think I really got going until the 24th or the 25th. But so it's the end of October. Yeah, you cannot walk in the desert. I mean, it's bad enough. It was really, really hot until about December. It was still over 100 every day
Mhm.
then. But yeah, so I started the end of October And I needed to be home by the end of I wanted to be home by Christmas if possible. But I went by the end of December because I had an appointment. I had another cancer treatment at Stanford on December 30th. So this was, like October the 23rd, and I had to be back for cancer treatment on December 30th.
Gotcha. So, what is the mission? I know a lot of the missions. I spoke with David Keir a while back, and he's going to be on the podcast as well. Um,
Excellent. Excellent.
so he described a lot the state that the missions in Baja, for the most part, are in. But Loreto is still a functioning church, right? Can you tell us a little bit about the
The Mother
mission there at
Mission of
Loreto?
California? It's the Mother Mission of California. Yes. It is very much an active parish church. It's absolutely beautiful. It's as gorgeous as anything we have in California. And there are a couple, two or three of the missions that are beautiful. Ignacio, that are as beautiful as what we have in California. But of the original 17 Jesuit missions, only a few of them remain. Almost all of them are ruins, which our California missions would be, except as you mentioned on one of your podcasts, the wonderful women who saved the El Camino Real and saved our missions. They didn't have that in Mexico, so they've lost a lot of their missions. But the missions are still there, and I've always said that the spirit is still there, and spirit never dies. And I can be in the rubble of an old mission in Mexico. I could stand there in that rubble, and I could feel spirit as strong in that rubble, sometimes a little stronger than I could standing in Mission Carmel or Mission Santa Barbara. The spirit is still there. The beautiful, beautiful spirit of yes.
So what would you say? Yeah, what would you say were the highlights or the most interesting parts of the journey, and what did you take away from hiking the Jesuit trail that was different from hiking the Franciscan trail?
That Franciscan Trail in California is beautiful, wonderful. There's a place to eat every mile or two because that's what we do. But down there are no restaurants. There's no food. I had to take meals ready to eat, and I took a little jet boil. But then water's scarce, so you have a problem with that. Yeah, it's totally wild down there. In 1908, Damien, the American Geographical Society said that the Baja California Peninsula was the most wild and remote place on Earth next to the polar regions. That was in 1908. And it still is. It still is. And people think of Baja California, Mexico, and they think of the beaches. Well, excuse me. We're talking about right straight line through the Sierras where the Jesuits built that road, right through the Cactus, right through the mountains. It's as wild and remote, and it's overgrown by 300 years of cactus in many places. So one of the things Trudy said I needed a machete. One of the first things she said, because I knew kind of how to do everything from my walk from San Diego to Sonoma. I knew how to pack, but I didn't have a machete. And she said, you need a machete. I didn't get one because the Vaquero had one. There were times that I regretted it profoundly, because the cactus was so heavy that that it was not unusual for the Vaquero, for the blade of the machete to actually break.
Wow. Did you ever have any? You told me you didn't have any concerns about security, but I know that that you did run into what could have been narcos more than once.
Yeah, one of the things that's so different is Lower California. There's Baja South and Baja North. Baja South is like it was 3 centuries ago, and that is, there are no fences. It's pretty open range, and the cattle can roam for 80, 90, 100 miles, okay? The vaqueros know how to round them up and everything. But then you get just halfway up, right at the border to Baja North, and the closer you get to the California border, to San Diego, the closer you get to Narcos and you get to the drug trade. And almost so many of the drugs coming up to San Diego and even New Mexico, they're coming up the Baja Peninsula. And it's a very, very dangerous place to be. And how do they bring it up? They bring it up on the arroyos, which followed the old, El Camino Real mission trail. So once I got to San Borja, in San Borja, after that, the vaqueros were very protective. We never went near an arroyo without them checking out an arroyo thoroughly. They watched constantly for footprints or any kind of prints. They could always tell narcos, and they'd tell you that it's a narco bringing in drugs, and you don't want to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. But I swear, if I had to put odds on a vaquero or a narco, I'd put my money on a vaquero. Those vaqueros live there in the desert. They are creatures of the wild. Yeah, they have, yeah. I'll just say that I was very lucky. We were never at the wrong place at the wrong time. We got really close. There were times when a vaquero actually left me in the desert because did not want to go any further. We had run into narcos and there was some intimidation. But for me, with cancer, I mean, my gosh, I always said I'd rather die on a mule in Mexico or die on with my boots on alongside a road than in bed at home. So I just kind of have a little different attitude about things than most people. But I've always felt so close to God. And when my time comes, just hope. I just, anyway, it's going to come to all of us. And I don't want to be foolish. I don't want to be stupid or foolish. I don't want to endanger anyone else's life. And I perfectly understood that Vaquero not willing to risk his life. And within 20 hours, another Vaquero had shown up with a fresh mule and fresh tortillas. And they were not about to leave me out there. They were not about to. I mean, these are honorable people. And I was paying them. And actually, I had with me in my REI gear bags, I had 4,000 US dollars in pesos, in small peso bills and stuff. I paid, for mules. I paid for vaqueros. I never, and I would go in. I'd have maybe a coffee, like when Maria Luisa or when I shared her bed. I never asked to pay. I just left. I left the money. I always left money underneath the coffee cup, or I always left the money. So word got out that I was being respectful too, because, they would never ask. But you don't wait for people to ask. You do. And so I was paying them. And I'll just say that I had 4,000 US dollars in a country the average person makes less than $300 a month. And here I am all by myself. By the way, I had more pills than I had pesos because of all the things going on, more pills than pesos. At the end of that journey, from Loreto to the San Diego border, I did not have one peso taken from me or stolen from me. I did not take one pill. And I mean, I was drinking water next to the mule out of a swamp.
Holy cow.
Because that's what you do. That's what you do. So what can I say? This is a pilgrimage. You're in the wilderness. And one of the people coming up through the Baja Peninsula during the gold rush, that was very heavily trafficked during the gold rush to get to California. He always said hunger is the best sauce. And that's so true, because the vaquero would show up with burritos, tortillas, and those tortillas in 110-degree desert heat, the tortillas would be green within 2 to 3 days. Tortillas would be green. You'd eat them anyway. And guess what? They were good.
I'm sure.
Hunger is the best sauce. Again, it's when you have nothing, everything is, like we have no water. what I could do with 1 cup of water. I could wash my body, wash my face, brush my teeth, 1 little cup of water. Not a it was too precious to bathe. Water's too precious to bathe.
Now, did you filter or boil water? How was the situation with the water?
I took a little, Camelback UV filter with me, a little, you know, that fit on the top of my Camelback. It looked like just like a regular mug. And the first thing I did every night is I also had dormitory bags that I got at REI that held up to 10 liters of water. And I had 3 of them. And so we kept those on the mules. So anytime I was around any water source, I always kept them filled up. But the first thing I did before I even put up my tent is I took care of my water situation. I was always completely done with the water. By the time we got to camp, the first thing I did was fill my water again, do the UV filter. And I had 2 of these canisters. And so I'd fill one and then I'd have the other. That's Water is the only thing that'll keep you from
Now, I know
alive.
that from other things that I've read and seen that um, the rancheros out there have a lot of traditional equipment that they use, especially the different chaps and things like that to protect them from the
Uh,
cactus. What did you do in that regard?
Amazing what they do. By the way, they make their own shoes. They make their own lariats. They make their own chaps. I always say if North Korea nukes us, head south to Baja, to one of these roadless ranchos, because they've been living there 300 years, and they know how to survive. They do everything. They make everything. They have all the skills that we have forgotten. Okay, so yeah, they make their chaps out of bull hide, and the bull hide is often 3 inch. I mean, it's huge, huge. They weigh so much, so much. I only had that protection one time. You know, yeah, I was pretty much shredded. I did have plastics, and I learned this in Loreto when I got there. I had a cotton shirt, and one of the people told me there, do not wear cotton in the desert because cactus will grab a hold of cotton,
Oh,
natural fibers. It will not grab a hold of plastic. So wear your polyester clothes. And so I had polyester top and had polyester pants. I did have gaiters, rattlesnake gaiters that I bought on Amazon before I went down. Rattlesnake gaiters that were kind of a joke, but they were good enough, because you're in Cactus. There's so many snakes out there, so many everything, scorpions and everything. After the while, you just kind of get that that's just life, that's just how life is. And one of the things on the California Mission Trail down there are vaquero sanctuaries everywhere on every mountain. You come up a mountain and it's sometimes the mules and horses don't even want it. The mules only was with a horse. A guy, vaquero, had a horse one time, so almost always mules or donkeys. But that they're so steep that the mules do not want to go up. But they force them up because they have to force them up. And at the top, there's usually a shrine. There'll be a small, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and then there'll be a candle there usually. And in the middle of nowhere, 100% of the time, the carol says not a word, the sign of the cross, and says a prayer, because they know that you can be dead in an instant. They know that. We've kind of forgotten that. And so I think they're very, very, very grateful every day uh, with what they have and with their life.
so when did you finish? Did you make it back by Christmas? How
I
did that
did,
go?
I did. But I was following Junipero Serra's diary, and it's only like 32 or 33 pages long, his original diary on where he camped and everything. And when he came up, the tides were such that he was able to walk the beach, pretty much the beach. up to towards San Diego. Right now, there's a 300-foot fence down into the water, and the tides are horrific along there sometimes. So I wasn't able to do that. I actually had to stop like 20 miles south of the border. And so my husband and I went back like 5 or 6 months later. We got a taxi and we went to the border. We got a taxi, Uber actually, to take us to where I'd stopped. Ubers are really big in Mexico, by the way. And so where I'd stopped my walk, and my husband and I walked the rest of the way. And it's really a very before there was a border there, that mission trail from like Santo Tomas all the way to Mission San Diego was very well defined. And a lot of it is still there. And Vaquero, I was of my last Vaquero, Femeni and Dora had actually mapped it out for me, and it was not that hard to follow the whole mission trail. Unfortunately, when you get that part of Mexico, the meth labs, we were even with the vaqueros in the last 2 weeks. There were places that armed people were by fences and would not let the vaquero would not let us. We had to go way around a canyon
Wow.
or something. There's bad stuff down there. There's some real, and that was 2015.
Yeah,
It's
that
gotten
was 10 years, more than 10 years ago. Holy
even
cow.
worse down there. And so, yeah, walking Tijuana through the slums of Tijuana and the outskirts of Tijuana was more terrifying, truly, than being down in the spine of the Sierras. And you realize, to me, I consider cancer evil. Um, uh, I consider drugs to be on the same part, the same evil. And yeah, and it's so sad what our insatiable appetite for drugs in California, what has happened to our neighbors to the south to accommodate our addictions. It's a moral dilemma, actually. And you see that firsthand when you're down there. You see that. And in fact, Vaqueros, the whole culture down there is changing. Um,
How is it changing?
there are places, like even when I came into, like Comantu, the State Department had out warnings, this even 2015, that known drug money was, they have to have, the money has to go somewhere. And so if I was down there and I ever saw a road, like the road that's on the front here, the reason this road looks like this, because this is where they bring drugs in from San Juan de Diaz. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. A good road, it's a drug road, I guarantee you. Um, a hotel that has a functioning toilet and shower, it's probably drug money, is financing some of that. There are
Gotcha.
drug money in San Diego. What is in the San Diego real estate done to high-end real estate in California? Um, it's there. It
Yeah.
permeates. It permeates. And again, with evil, you never want to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And you pray to God. That's one of to protect us from evil. But we can't stop living.
Absolutely. I kept you a long time, but I still just have a couple more questions I'd love to ask you about your trip. First of all, um, what do you think this well, what did you learn about California or the Californias in terms of their history that you think we all should know?
When I wrote The Mission Walker, I have used 50 historical sources, okay, where I'm telling the history of the missions and some of the history and people who have traversed the peninsula. Um, I think that what we should know is, and you mentioned this in your introduction to your website, and I think you mentioned David Hurst Thomas, who talks about the grand narrative, bad
Right.
men, good men, and that's really as a fake bad man and good man, that there is good in all of us and there's bad in all of us. And any kind of a complicated, any kind of a undertaking that a stupendous undertaking. Actually, one of the missionaries said, great undertakings. Great undertakings always involve great contradictions, and we have to be careful that we don't apply our sense of whatever to what someone in the past. And when you read the journals, you read what the missionaries went through. You read that, how everybody thought they were out there getting rich. And even people today believe that there are treasures out there. And how they were persecuted and how the Jesuits were at gunpoint taken in 1767 at gunpoint. And they were imprisoned and died in prison. The Jesuits down there who built those missions were imprisoned because the king of Spain was told that they were stealing silver and gold and hoarding it in those old missions. And you go down there and there's nothing but cactus, rattlesnakes everywhere, scorpions, giant centipedes. And there's no gold and silver, and we've got to be careful that that's a conspiracy theory. We have to be very careful that we don't get caught up in the same lies where we're, that truth is real truth. And fear, what is the opposite of fear? The opposite of fear is trust.
Very true.
Trust. For me, what got me through cancer, who got me through that cactus patch down south, got me through the 800 miles of California Mission Trail with only one line. It was trust. Trust in God. Trust in people. Trust. And my philosophy, my favorite philosopher, Mae West, she said, we only live once, but if we do it right, once is enough.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Wow. There's so much more I could ask you, but I know we have to go. Do you think, just before you leave, do you think that we can have a Camino in California like the one they have in Spain to Santiago? Is that taking shape? I know there's so many people and sorry, what about both Californias? It sounds like, of course, Baja, that's a whole nother story, but I know that there was that idea to have the Camino Real of both Californias.
It'll never happen. It'll never happen. Okay, but San Diego to Sonoma, will it ever be the Compostela in Spain? No. California is not Spain. California is wild and crazy and that's what walking the California Mission Trail is. It's wild and crazy and it's concrete and it's pavement and it's, it is what it is. And you don't want it to be like Spain. It is what it is. And, it is a beautiful pilgrimage. It's something that we can all do because we can walk, from one mission to another mission takes you about 2 or 3 days. And you don't even have to walk from one mission to the next. You can get out and just walk today, 3 miles on the mission trail, 3 days tomorrow, 3 days the next day. And before you know it, you've really walked the 800 miles. So many of the people, and by the way, the 101 person, number 101 certificate was just given out yesterday to the California Mission Mark Organization. They give you a certificate. 101 people have now walked all the way from San Diego to Sonoma. And many of them have done it in segments.
Mm-hmm.
There's no need to feel you have to go out and walk, 800 miles in 55 days. Now, I had to do that because I had to, my body was very broken and I needed a lot of healing. But it's like right now, I'm walking the old Spanish Trail across the United States, Cabeza de Vaca in 1537, and that's a whole different story. But I've walked
Holy
from
cow. I'd like to do a whole interview with you about that. Maybe we could do that when you finish, because that's
I,
amazing too.
and I walked from Pensacola to I just finished Far West Texas to El Paso. Um, yeah, it's a totally different experience, but I'm doing it one segment at a time. I walked, I walked 420 miles at a time, but I just finished walking 210 miles from Van Horn to El Paso in far, far west Texas. And by the way, if you think Mexico is desolate, it's nothing compared to the desolation of far, far west Texas.
I believe it.
Uh, yeah. And
Well,
every walk is empowering. Every step is empowering. It allows us and encourages us and prepares us to the next step.
well, for those of you who have listened to this, if you are interested in doing the California missions in segments, like Edie just mentioned, you can listen to the very first interview I did with Maggie Espinosa, who did that, and she'll talk about that as well. There we go. There's the
It's
On
her
a
book.
Mission. There's the book.
Another wonderful book that's been written by another pilgrimage friend is Kristen Clifford. Okay.
Oh, my good friend Christian Clifford.
Oh,
Exactly.
yes.
He's a
Yes.
great person.
And this is someone who did it. He's actually a Jesuit missionary who did it before I did it. And he wrote the book, but he has not been on any interviews.
Well,
Okay.
I'll
He did
have
it
to
before
interview him.
there was ever anybody. He did it.
Well,
Okay.
I'll look that one up and interview him. And he probably would need to say yes, because I've spent so much money at Jesuit schools that I think they owe me. So thank you so much, Edie. Once again, the book is The Mission Walker, and it sounds like you have a lot of adventures ahead still. And I was very, very much personally inspired by this, also because because of your story, the missions, something that I am fascinated by, and also because you know the story of your fighting and living with cancer is something that is close to all of us. I have personally have many friends and relatives who've been through this, and so I'm just amazingly inspired by this, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you, Damien, for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.